Good afternoon, members of the media, members of the national community. Thank you very much, media personnel, for coming out this Sunday afternoon. I want to take the opportunity just to give you a little heads up as to what we have been engaged in for the past week. As you would know, I led a fairly large delegation to Guyana on Tuesday, and this was in response to some work that we had been doing at the level of Caricom and bilaterally between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana. The main focus of that meeting that is now taking place and is now on record in Guyana was to try to sharpen our focus on getting the appropriate responses to some of the difficulties and the opportunities that we are facing as, one, Caribbean people, and two, our business and other relationships with our closest neighbor in the south here, Guyana. You would have been carrying out news items on a regular basis on the whole question of food inflation driven by unavailability of supplies, and where supplies are available, the rapidly moving costs of those impacting our households in a way that has caused a lot of concern. And of course, the country looks to the government and our governments in Caricom to insulate us from these vagaries of prices and supply chain disruptions that now seem to be the order of the day. We are a trading nation, Trinidad and Tobago, and much of what I say about Trinidad and Tobago would be applicable to our Caricom neighbors. We import most of our food, and this question of a food import bill has always been on our lips. And even where we do have the money to pay for food, we have found out that there are times when you can't obtain the supplies even from your normal suppliers. This has driven Caricom to take steps to look at what we need to do within our borders to ensure that, notwithstanding what might be happening outside, that we do the best that we can at home and therefore refocus our food production systems towards ensuring that all our production systems, whether they are small farmers, medium farmers, large farmers, or even farmers who do not now exist, to create new production and to expand production, that become a major focus of Caricom. We've had this work going on at the level of the heads of government and the leadership of Guyana, starting with President Jagdio, who had done some documentation before, and now President Ali, who has accelerated it in a major way, resulting in us going to Guyana this week. A present down there with me, led by President Ali, was the Prime Minister of Antigua, the representation from the Barbados government, the Prime Minister of Montserrat was there, the Prime Minister of, we had people, the Barbados and St. Lucia. So a number of Caricom government interests were there, and all of the Guyanese government interests, technical people, and the requisite political leadership of the country. What we were focusing on, two things. One, significant increase in production of raw materials that form the basis of our food supply, meaning those things that we import in large volumes, and those are corn, soya, and of course meat. We focus on those three things. And the reason why this is being done with a focus on Guyana is because Guyana has the physical capacity to significantly increase the supply of these raw materials within Caricom as Caricom's home production. And that also involves wheat, because in this discussion and in this practicum, we are also looking at the production of wheat in Guyana getting the right varieties, and I'm pleased to announce that the tests have shown that there are varieties that can do well in our area. The tests on the cornfields that we have been very positive, and so the soya bean. And more importantly, we are not limiting our vision to what we are capable of or have experience in within Caricom. We have found significant positive interest across the border in southern Venezuela, Guyana, where the Brazilian state of Roraima, which is a small Brazilian state, but small by Brazilian standard, but large by our standard, immediately across the border from Guyana, a significant agricultural production. And the principals in that production, whether it be corn, soya, rice, and meat, they took part in this meeting in Guyana, interested in partnering with Caricom in increasing our food supply. We met them. They have indicated a commitment rather than looking south towards Sao Paulo, they look north into the Caribbean and bring with them the infrastructure that they have, the significant technical expertise that they have, and the relationship that exists between them and Guyana expanded into CARICOM. And of course, in short order, we can satisfy our needs for meat. We can significantly increase our supply of rice and, of course, soya and corn. If those things are done as they should be done, then CARICOM would begin to insulate itself from the ups and downs and the shortages that take place and will continue to take place. There's an article in, I think it's The Economist this week, and it's headlined, "The Coming Food Catastrophe." And I would hold it out for you all for good reading. What it's really pointing to is that the world food supply is going to become more and more problematic. And as you saw with the vaccine, it is who has more corn will feed more fowl, and some people will not be able to feed any fowl at all. So we at this time have to get serious about increasing our production. In all of this, the whole question of the role of the small, the medium, need to be protected, as well as the creation of new investments, because these increased productions will not come without significant investment. We do have some investment capacity, and we have been also looking and finding good offers of investment. In this period that we are in, this kind of situation, what we are finding is that the offer of assistance in funding our arrangements to get out of our difficulty, those offers have been coming forward, and we have some significant proposals on the table in meetings that we are going to be involved in the coming weeks, whether it is with the CDB at the Summit of the Americas or the European Development Day. All of these things are coming up, and they all seem to be coming at the same time because everybody is focusing on the difficulties that we all are experiencing. So we do have now some capacity to do the kinds of things that we've been talking about, and some support to get them done. And it brings into focus immediately, if we manage to get these increased production, that we now have to focus on transportation of what we produce to the places of packaging, to the places of processing, and of course the distribution system. And we are aiming to handle all of that as a major CARICOM initiative. So this meeting that took place in Guyana, I would say, would have broken the back of this, what we do about our food import and our food import bill. We have broken the back of it. We've found a way forward. We are committed to a way forward, and there will have to be adjustments to accommodate that. And of course, as we go forward with that, it calls out the whole question of whether we are going to seriously move towards the operations of a single market and a single economy in CARICOM. Because if we do not go down that road, we could find ourselves obstructing these possibilities as we play dog in the manger on an island basis, or on a national basis. We in Caricom have to get serious, and the commitment among Caricom leaders at this time is that we are driven, pushed to be serious on these matters. As a result of what we have agreed to advance and to accept as our direction in this Guyana meeting, there has to be immediate follow-up, and that follow-up, the next follow-up would be in Trinidad and Tobago in August. I will set that date in the next few days. Minister Brown, who was part of our contingent, is still in Guyana, wrapping up some loose ends there. And as soon as he returns, we will announce the date to our Caricom colleagues. And the Brazilians from Roraima are now, they've asked to be invited into the planning of this, and we have agreed to invite them in. And they will be here in Trinidad and Tobago to present largely to the Trinidad and Tobago private sector what is possible in terms of ability to get expansion, and more importantly, opportunities for significant investment in agriculture, because what has been holding us back in agriculture is the absence of the scale of investment that is required to move the needle in terms of quantum. Imagine we're talking here in Trinidad and Tobago about maximizing our rice production. Yes, we are talking about that, and we're going to be acting on that. But it looks as if that we could get to about 5,000 acres. And then we talk to people in southern Guyana with the Brazilian input, and they talk about 50,000 acres. I can't point to a cattle farm in this country that has a few hundred heads of beef cattle, but it's possible, and they already exist with access into the Caricom market once we open the door to them, of an abattoir that could slaughter 1,000 heads of cattle a day. What we have been doing is looking for our food supply far away around the world, when in fact there are possibilities to find the food supply next door with our effort, significant aspects of our investment and our transportation. But there are some missing links that we need to put in place to ensure that our food supply comes from the closest, most affordable, and most sustainable arrangements. And that is the difference. Currently, we import a lot of our meat from Australia and New Zealand, Europe and the United States. Very little from next door. A lot of our fresh fruits. There ought to be no shortage of fresh fruits in the Caricom, because we are able, if we do what we have to do, to access all of it from within Caricom, both in the islands and in the Guyanese and Belizean plains. So we are embarking on this, and you will see and hear a whole lot more about it. We've also agreed, in order to keep this momentum going and to move from plan to execution, that Caricom would set up, largely led by Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana, a commission of technocrats to help guide this political decision that we have been making, so that the actual work is done in the context of the data and the technical support that is required, both to accept assistance and to use that assistance to move us from where we are to where we would like to be. So these are the kinds of assignments that we'll be doing, and our Trinidad and Tobago ministers and our technical people will be very busy between now and the end of August, and we're going to have a major meeting here in mid-August. So that is, and this is the second press conference I'm participating in for the day. You might have seen, and you do have access to the one that took place in Guyana, where President Ali and myself spoke to the media in Guyana. So if you look at that, you would see a little bit more about what the other leaders are saying about what I am summarizing here for you. So that's, if you hold your questions in that for the moment, I just want to mention two other things which might be of interest to you. One is that, as you know, we have been very busy in the last few weeks trying to ensure that the Summit of the Americas take place with as little disruption as possible, because we have some significant interest in ensuring that that meeting of our North American colleagues and our Caribbean countries take place. The Summit of the Americas is due to take place in Los Angeles starting on the 6th of June and will end on the 10th of June. There were, at Caricom, we had led quite an effort to try to influence what the summit is. Our position is that the Summit of the Americas should be a meeting of all the countries of the Americas. The United States, as the host country, had a slightly different point of view. And we did argue, we made our case known. Caricom had asked that 3 of the Caricom leaders engage the United States on this matter. I was one of them, and Prime Minister Motley. We did engage the United States in the last few weeks on a number of occasions at different levels at their leadership and decision making. And arising out of those contacts, you would have seen the United States would have backed away a bit from its treatment of Cuba and has made some concessions. And Caricom, at some time you would have seen some Caricom leaders indicating not participating in the summit. We have met on this matter on very many occasions. Our final position, there's a statement which, if it is not out yet, it should be out today from Caricom, indicating our position on this matter. I can tell you that Trinidad and Tobago, with me as a representative, I will be attending the summit, and I expect that, if not all, the majority of my Caricom colleagues will be there, and we have in serious and interesting matters to engage the United States on, and we look forward to that. The other matter is the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which is to take place in Kigali in Rwanda on the 21st of, I think it starts on the 21st of June. The issue that has been exercising us and making news is one of the main items in that agenda is the election of a new Secretary General. You may recall that Secretary General was elected at the meeting in Malta in 2015, and the Secretary General serves a 4-year term. So a new election was due, and that happened to have coincided with COVID. This meeting that is taking place next month was supposed to have taken place in 2020 and again in 2021, and had to be postponed on both occasions because of the COVID restrictions. The meeting is now going to take place, and the election of a Secretary General comes up. Caricom claims to have the position. I may tell you now that it was never Trinidad and Tobago's position that Caricom did have that position, personal. We had the option, it was our turn to be afforded the chairmanship. But when that came about in the Malta meeting, Caricom supported an individual who, while being Caribbean by birth, having spent 2 years here, in fact, had lived all her useful life in the United Kingdom, had risen to the level of Attorney General of the United Kingdom, and had in fact become a baroness in the British Parliament. It was always the position of Trinidad and Tobago that such a person was not really a representative of Caricom to represent us when it was our turn to lead. That position was not shared by our other colleagues. However, the appointment, the election did have Caricom support, and that election went in the favor of the incumbent. Now, that the election is due again, all I can say is that Trinidad and Tobago's position remain consistently the same. However, in the wider Caricom, the situation arrived at is one where there are now 2 Caricom candidates. And unfortunately, Trinidad and Tobago only has 1 vote. So we are required now to support either or of these 2 candidates. It is Trinidad and Tobago's position that we remain consistent, and therefore our support for one of the Caricom candidates will be support for Minister Camino Johnson-Smith, the Foreign Minister of Jamaica, who is representing one of the Caricom possibilities going forward. I will not be attending that meeting in Kigali. Minister Brown will lead the delegation, and the main reason why I will not be attending is because I have scheduled, or I had scheduled for quite some time, some medical examinations, which happened I was aiming to do after the meeting in Los Angeles. I was just going to do my medical day, but now, having agreed to do that, there's another major meeting that has come up on the 21st and the 22nd, and that meeting is called European Development Days, where the European Union has called basically a world summit to indicate to the world what the European Union is prepared to do for and with the issues that have, many of which I probably would have touched on, or you can find our interest in. And it's all the leadership from the various regions, in Latin America and the Caribbean, the leadership selected to take part in that meeting. There are 3 Caricom leaders who are invited to that meeting. The chairman of Caricom, which is Prime Minister Briceño of Belize, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, and myself, along with 3 other leaders from Latin America. And they're all members of the European Union leadership, presidents and prime ministers will be there, and the United States leadership, president, vice president, and the leadership of Asia would be there. So I will attend that meeting after the summit. And my position of not going to Kigali remains the same. So June was a very, very busy month for me and for Trinidad and Tobago and for CARICOM, because significant decision-making is to be had. Today, I have been advised today that we also were lucky to be identified for a not insignificant share of some funding that is to be made available from the Bill Gates Foundation. I spoke to the Secretary General of the United Nations, who have identified us for that gift, which we will ensure that we accept and put to good use in Trinidad and Tobago. So it's a very interesting period, a very interesting month, and I trust that those of you in the media would be following what's happening around us, above us, below us, and ahead of us, and focus on the possibilities that are in front of us, and judge us by how much we can achieve and accomplish, and what we do to make our difficult circumstances bearable and more beneficial to our people. So if you have any questions on any of these matters, I will take them now.
Good afternoon to you, Prime Minister. Welcome back. Urvashi from TV6. Where should I start? So, Prime Minister...
Let's not have too many questions at once, right? Let's take the questions one by one, and I'll give everybody an opportunity to have a repeat if it's required.
No problem. So, I would like to ask about the relations... I'd like to ask about the private sector in Guyana. They, of course, have indicated some concern about the very memorandum of understanding which was signed today, in particular the non-tariff barriers. Of course, I think at the press conference earlier today, some mention was made of addressing those non-tariff barriers. Can you expand a little bit, Mr. Prime Minister? What in particular are we looking at? And was this sufficient to sort of placate the private sector in Guyana?
I am not unduly worried about the comments from the Guyana Chamber of Commerce, because I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if similar comments are made by one of our chambers here in Trinidad and Tobago. What you see there are people ensuring that their interests are well served, and they've raised an issue which cannot be swept under the carpet or ignored. We do have tariff barriers within Caricom, and some of them are, upon examination, possible that they can be found not to be justifiable. And if there are impediments to our trade and our business and our relationships, then it will fall to the leadership of the various countries to ensure that these, what I call artificial boundaries, are not put in place. Because we're not going to get anywhere. We are certain to fail if we behave in a way where the wider interest is impeded by narrow interests. That makes a nonsense of Caricom itself. It makes a nonsense of anything about a single market and economy. And what I see when people make comments like that is that they're saying we do have some barriers which are affecting us, and we'll want those barriers to come down so that there be free movement. And if that is so, then once those free movements are not scientifically damaging to us, they should really be bounded only by the letter and spirit of the Chaguaramas Treaty. That's once we subscribe to Caricom and the benefits to be had, trading as one group, one people, one economy, and that should be our objective. But I'm not going to be distracted or even excited or angered by a comment from a Chamber of Commerce. I could tell you, I have been in Guyana for a week, and I have had nothing but warm welcome, clear understanding, and enthusiasm from the government and people of Guyana. And the last statement I saw from the Chamber convinces me that whatever one might have thought about the timing and the initial statement, that there are people who are prepared to work towards the objectives that I have just outlined.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kimberly D'Souza, TTT News. Of course, Prime Minister, welcome back to TNT. As it relates to the discussions that you had with the people in Guyana, any updates on how TNT will be involved in the energy sector over there?
Yes, we did sign the Memorandum of Understanding, and one of the areas of endeavor that we've highlighted in there is energy. Let's look at it this way. Guyana has made significant progress already in the energy sector and is now a major producer of hydrocarbon, mainly oil. You would be surprised to know how much Trinidad and Tobago is already involved in that. And only yesterday, as we were out, I got the information, the news from my colleagues here in Trinidad and Tobago, that, for example, our National Helicopter Service, which is the helicopter service that we use in Trinidad and Tobago in our system, yes, on Saturday, confirmed its third, not the first or second, but its third contract to begin yesterday to service the Guyana, the Repsol fields offshore in Guyana. So we are in at this level, and of course, our long involvement in oil and gas production is finding notice by the government and the technical people and those who are in the fields in Guyana who need services that we can provide. And we will ensure that our relationship with the government and people of Guyana and the businesses in Guyana are such that those relationships allow us to participate in whatever is going on in the same way that Guyana looks to us our manufacturing sector, our business sector, our banking sector, our insurance sector to participate in whatever is going on in Guyana and in the rest of Caricom. The energy sector is a world industry. That's one thing you should bear in mind. Guyana is not getting involved in any discovery of anything on Mars. The energy sector is a world industry. Even the price is fixed as a world price, quoted every day. As you would have seen, we talk about the price of WTI, the price of Brent. Our Trinidad resources are being handled, exploited in the fields by Australian business, British business, American business. So where do you see Guyana oil business excluding Trinidad and Tobago when we are a next door business, a partner in Caricom? So don't let the negative comments you might hear from one or two people who are of little faith or who might have different agendas to confuse you into thinking that there's some insurmountable barrier in the way. But it's a period of difficulty. It's a period of great promise and potential prosperity for all of us. And it's how we handle it, how we behave, that will determine whether we do well or whether we make a fool of ourselves.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Prime Minister. A few months ago, I believe, there had been some to and fro between Guyanese public officials, in particular Vice President Mr. Barrett Jagdeo. During your visit, were you able to meet with him? Did you chat with him? And how would you now describe relations between our two countries?
The relationship between Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana is probably better now than it ever has been. And I spend a significant amount of the time I spent in Guyana this week with with Vice President Jagdeo. And as far as he will tell you, and I will tell you, we get along very well. Don't let other people's, comments and stories lead you to come to conclusions that is otherwise. I mean, we may not see eye to eye on everything, and that's why we have 4 eyes between the two of us. But certainly, what we do have is a responsibility to conduct ourselves in a way that would be of great benefit to the people of Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caricom. And I can assure you that is what happens.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prime Minister. Shane Superville from the Newsday newspaper here. It has been reported that the U.S. is trying to ease sanctions against Venezuela for the time being. Just wanted to know, how is this going to impact on TNT and Venezuela's energy negotiations and activities?
You said that the U.S. is about to ease sanctions on Venezuela.
It has been reported.
Okay, yeah. Well, those reports we receive with great enthusiasm because you would know that those sanctions have affected us very badly. We have significant business that we had negotiated with Venezuela, and the U.S. unilateral positions have hurt us. I could just simply tell you that we have not been allowing the grass to grow under our feet. On these matters, we have been in significant, continuous contact, I wouldn't say negotiations, but representation at the highest levels in the United States, at the medium levels, and with respect to sanctions and its effect on Trinidad and Tobago, we are making the requisite representations, and we welcome any and all rollback which will allow us to conduct trade and business in the way that we think it should be done, and which would not prevent us from benefiting from being Venezuela's closest neighbor and from having access to the resources that are available in the region.
Just in terms of agriculture, some of the points you would have touched on during the course of the expo in Guyana, some of the local agricultural stakeholders and other stakeholders has also questioned, how come or why is it only now, we are seeking to establish these sort of routes and activities with Guyana in terms of agriculture?
Well, the answer to that is because we have determined that we've waited long enough, and it's better late than never. We are on an assignment to ensure that the food supply is increased and that all of us the Guyanese producers, the Caribbean island producers, and all our consumers can have access to the food and nutrition that we need. And I don't know that I want to spend any of my time or any of yours on talking about how come now. It is now that we have a meal to look for going forward. What we've eaten before, right, is of no interest now. We want to make sure we don't starve in the future. So that might be what's driving us now.
Mr. Prime Minister, at the joint conference earlier this morning, I believe a journalist would have asked you about the role, if there is a role at all, for our refinery as it relates to, Guyana oil. You didn't actually say yes or no, but of course we were told a few days ago that one bidder had been singled out for the refinery. Can you just clear that up? Or just
you're very observant, right? I really didn't want to get into too much of a discussion on that in that environment, because we have here in Trinidad and Tobago a process which is underway. And that process is, we have gone out publicly, and we had, I think, 3 or 4 interested parties. The last report that I mentioned in the Parliament is that the company, Petrotrin TPHL, the evaluation process has now identified one company to go forward within those discussions. I didn't want to get into that depth of detail in Guyana, but I can tell you that if you look at the reason why we closed the refinery in Trinidad, contrary to what you might have heard from some other people, the reason was that we did not have an adequate supply of oil to keep the refinery running, of our own oil. What we were doing, we were importing oil from the world market, 120,000 barrels a day, and refining it in that refinery and losing between $5 or $7 or up to $15 a barrel loss in that operation. So in that situation, we closed the refining operation of our involvement in the oil business. And we always said, as we had just done, we will go out and ask if there's anybody who has a supply of oil or who can access a supply of oil, and such person or entity would like to use the refinery, we can make an arrangement. That is what we are involved in now. And I can tell you that the discussion did involve the possibility that if Guyana has oil and Guyana is interested with someone who we have selected here or are selecting, then those conversations should take place. That's where we are at the moment. It all has to do with a supply of oil to the refinery which exists and can, with some not insignificant effort, be brought back into operation if only there is an entity with a supply of oil. That entity is not the government of Trinidad and Tobago, it's not Petrotrin, and if other entities come up, we'll be very happy, because we always would be happy. We always would be happy if the refinery is operating. It doesn't have to be a government refinery to be a contributor to our economy. But it all turns on an availability of oil which will not cost the people of Trinidad and Tobago significant losses that I have just mentioned.
My final question on the Agriculture Expo is that I know that Caricom's 25-25 initiative really involves reducing extra-regional imports by 25%. But of course, Mr. Prime Minister, this is like a $418 million US value we're talking about, market that we're talking about. That's at 25%. What is Trinidad and Tobago's role? We don't really have much land space. What is our role really? Are we looking to add value, manufacturing, processing, and so on? Thank you.
Our role in this is to turn our gaze away from where we are now as a purchaser of other products towards a purchaser of another set of products produced, let's say, in southern Guyana. And since we don't have the acreage to produce on that scale to make that significant difference, it seems to us, and this is what we thought in Caricom, that Trinidad and Tobago should invest in the production capacities in Caricom, in Guyana. If that investment is made, then that's a first step for our benefit. Secondly, we do have significant processing and refining capacity in Trinidad and Tobago. If the raw material is produced in Guyana, well, soybean from Guyana and soybean from Iowa, whose soybean do you want to buy? Corn from Iowa and corn from the Rupununi, whose corn do you want to buy? And that is why in my presentation, when we opened the conference, I spoke about the need to review and adjust our business model. If our business model as it is now is a business model to buy our supplies from elsewhere outside of the region, compete and toss up with shortages and supply chain and preferential service, as against a business model that says we will invest in fields and production in neighboring Guyana. If we choose the business model A or business model B,
Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Join TTT this Sunday at 7 p.m. for Delving Deeper with Minister the Honorable Marvin Gonzalez.
Dearer to me than all the stars. So many wish but never reach. 'Cause when I'm falling and all the world seems dark, you help me find my peace. Oh, shun mi ba fishani. Oh, shun mi ba.
I may not be right for you, but I'm right for somebody.
It's your girl Didi, and we are back with another episode of We Outside. You know we have been hitting you with events week upon week. Greatness happening, and it continues to happen.
I may not be right for you, but I'm right for somebody. Yeah, 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 yeah. I looking good, I feeling good, I real good, I real.
Welcome to another informative episode of TT Online Community Voices. It is brought to you with the kind compliments of the Ministry of Sport and Community Development.
Every single citizen should be able to at least have the conversation now of what to do next.
To help you to achieve your goals, your life goals, and to further progress yourself in life.
Welcome to a taste of chutney. Mix the chutney and the soca in the masala. Mix the chutney and the soca in the masala. When we touch the stage, we blaze with the greatest fire. So if you see your one, sing with me.
who have an apology for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. One is Kamla Prasad Bisesa, former Prime Minister and opposition leader. And the other one is Dr. Robert Sabga. They should apologize to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Because this matter of the treatment of those children, and worse, the conflating of this matter with the Akil Chambers mystery, I find the behavior of some of these people quite reprehensible. For example, this 1997 report that came to the fore recently by the work of the Express, how that report managed to treat with the 1998 killing of Akil Chambers. Are you aware of that? How could the chairman of the report of 1997 speak to the country as though his involvement in that report involved knowledge and expectation from a murder of a child that took place a year later, and worse, ascribing that to officials of a political party while exonerating another political party? And then you have an opposition leader going on a political platform with video of this obscenity and publishing that as the state of play in Trinidad and Tobago, and has the gall to want to implicate the country's prime minister in some wrongdoing in this nonsense. What is wrong with you all? But you know, you can ask me that question because you have me behind this podium on a regular basis to ask questions of. I will give you an assignment to go and find the opposition leader, if you can, and ask her a question and wait for an answer, if you can. This is unfair to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know anybody in this country who did not feel the outrage of what we were told was happening to those children in those homes. And for it now to become this political football of self-serving miscreants is another failing of this country. The national conversation in this country needs to be uplifted. And once again, I want to say to the media, I don't want to tell you how to do your work, but stop being an echo chamber for the UNC. Ask the right questions in the right places of the right people, and then you wouldn't come and come about backlash. Because there's no backlash coming my way. I do not speak loosely, and I don't tell lies. I am prepared to stand the consequences of my actions, whatever they might be, and therefore I don't have to lie to get a better outcome. So when I say something, if I make a mistake, I'll be the first to apologize. But I don't speak loosely. And this matter has been in the public domain long enough for the local media to be able to establish the facts for the people of Trinidad and Tobago and not get itself exercised by the worthlessness of a political party, putting people in front of a camera to make a video, to tell lies on the living and the dead. And how does abuse of children in the homes of care become political issue, whether it's PNM or UNC? What does that have to do with it? What we want to know is if there's any citizen who would have treated any child like that. That's what we want to know. I'm not interested in any of your political persuasion, as Dr. Sabga is implying that if you are UNC, you are exonerated. And of course, I know all of these things about what was happening in some ring, criminal ring against children, and you know telling me that. A good case could be made for public floggings, but I wouldn't make it now.
All right, Prime Minister, another question to you. The members of the public service are quite outraged over the offer of that 2%, and they're threatening to shut down the country through their unions. You care to offer anything to them?
Come on, let's not overreact. Let's not shut down the country. Let's not be surprised that the union and some workers will feel that way. Because what it is It's about making a case to get a raise. That's what it is. What this government has done since 2015 September is to make it quite clear that we are in support of an improvement in the condition and the sustainability of jobs in the public service. One, we never, in the most difficult of periods, we never try to solve our difficulty by removing public servants from their job, by retrenching the public servants who are covered here. Never did that. This is our 7th year in government. We never took a policy to retrench public servants in a response to attempting to balance the budget. Secondly, we said that we will preserve the jobs as against giving more to some while some lose their jobs. Thirdly, we borrowed money very early in our existence and paid, I think it was about $6 billion in back pay to those public servants. Approximately $6 billion of cash that we borrowed it and paid it to public servants. And of course, that back pay was kicked in at the same time that a slight increase in pay came about. We've had very difficult travel since then. The statements of the Minister of Finance recently were very clear that there's a little breathing space now. And immediately we look towards trying to see whether we can continue to add something to the public servants, preserving their jobs, but to look to see what we can add. Clearly what has been offered has offended some people, but let's have a quick look at what it is, because we did from time to time have to say to the population, particularly public servants, given what the government has done and what the government is doing, try and not get derailed by wanting more from less. We have a little bit more now, and therefore a little bit more can provide a little bit more. A little bit more cannot provide all that you require. I've asked the Minister of Finance to provide me with the CPOs, because the CPO is really the technical employer of public servants, looking at their cost and knowing who is there to be paid. Let me just tell the public what, I'll give you 4 horizons, because I asked the Minister of Finance to give me the breakdown as to what it will cost. Currently, the public servant's wage bill is $8.7 billion. That's what, if no increase at all, $8.7 billion is what we're paying now. And if we, at a 2% increase, covering the period that we, going back to 2014 to 2020, a 2% increase in that, would see an additional cost on the recurrent of $175 million. That's only on salary and wage. In COLA, $1 billion. And that's the back pay. Very correct. And then a monthly increase of $411 million going forward. That's the 2% increase. Covering, that's what the Minister of Finance has offered. If perchance we get to, let's say, 4% increase, where we're currently committed to $8.7 billion, we'll be talking about a pay revision of $1.8 billion and a running cost of increase $588 million. That's 4%. And if you hear anybody talking about 10 and 15%, At 10%, we'll be talking about a back pay of 4.5 billion and an increased running cost of 1.1 billion. Now, you put that against the recent report of a slight increase in the revenues for the Minister of Finance against the background of the huge debt that we had run up for COVID and pre-COVID. Put them all together, and then you come to a conclusion as to whether shutting down the country or not is the appropriate response to these circumstances. We would love to give the public servants as much as they can expect, but it has to be tempered by what reality is. The Minister of Finance indicated that from what little increase we've got in the current market price, that we will try to give public servants something from it. Do not for 1 minute be guided by the fact that oil price is $100, because the oil market overnight could change. And therefore, if we commit ourselves to making payments based on what prevails now, and in 3 months or 2 months or 6 months, the price drops to $60 or $50, we would have worsened our position. Reason is required, and patience is an essential ingredient. I think you would want us to continue keeping people in jobs. You would want us to continue looking for the opportunity to provide them with an improved payment, but let us not get too carried away on this.
The final question from me. I would agree with you. The Akil Chambers tragedy, as you described it, is distinct and different from the Sabga report. But they both point to one thing, which is the welfare of children. Could you imagine, Mr. Prime Minister, that decades later, we as a country, we're still mourning for children who are ruined by pedophiles? And I think that it's a little bit worse, because since these reports and the discussion started going on, we've seen so many more testimonies in our newspapers, sometimes on social media. So many other people are saying the same happened to them. Some people go to sleep believing that every night some child is being woken up to satisfy a disgusting need of a human being.
Yeah,
Do you think
Vashi,
radical change is needed, Mr. Prime Minister?
We have to make a distinction between thoughts, speculation, and facts. And we also are not users of time machines. We cannot go back and do over what has been done or undo what has been done. What we can do is to ensure that the situation that we are and the condition that you are talking about there, that they don't prevail for a day longer than they might have had we not intervened. This government, being concerned that those situations might still be existing, we started a process to go and find the facts, and we are responding to those facts. With respect to the criminal conduct that you mentioned, there's one avenue for treating with that, one and one only. And that is the involvement of the police to do proper investigations, to find named and known individuals against whom the evidence has pointed. That's what we're doing right now. If it wasn't done before, then we as a people have to regret that. But we cannot go back 24 years and say, okay, let us undo that. It has been done. And that is why those who 24 years ago did not do what this government is doing, which is putting the police to find that pedophile, if he or she exists, find him or her, and prosecute him or her to the full extent of the law. That's what we have to do. And therefore, while we carry the hurt of what happened before in an unattended way, or in a way that there was no closure, it ought not to prevent us now from taking a more effective pathway, I could tell you, it never crossed my mind as Prime Minister to not lay that report in the Parliament. The Cabinet unanimously agreed that the report should be laid in the Parliament. We got it on December 13th. By March, a few weeks later, we took that decision. Where was it in the intervening period? It went to the Children's Authority, because as much as you would like somebody to be drawn and quartered now, it has to be done on evidence and on facts. And certain people, certain agencies have to be held accountable. And that's why as soon as we got the report, our report of 2021, it went straight into a system of dealing with the issue. Dealing with it. I don't know where the police is now. I don't know what they will find. But what I can tell you, there are no barriers between what was of concern, any information or evidence that was unearthed, and any action that is to be taken where wrongdoing is thought to be going on, or where there's comfort absent in those homes. And, you know, the emotion causes some people to say some things that are not really helpful. You know, we heard people saying, you take the child out of there. Firstly, you also heard some people saying, well, our evidence on the committee is not what we're seeing being published in the newspapers by some other people. And of course, it brings us to the point. The reason why those children are where they are is because there are certain issues with them. If you move them to another place, that situation does not automatically change. If I remind you all, one of the issues we heard during the time before this last report was a situation where an employee at one of these homes, an employee of one of these homes, was in fact taking a child out of one of these homes. Some people say it's extending love and affection. Some people say it's abuse. What are the facts? Because only the facts could tell us whether that situation is one that should have been lauded or one that should have been attracting the attention of the police from day one. And if the children go to another home, another place, to another person, where is the guarantee that that abuse is never going to happen? I could tell you, since this matter has blown up, it has come to my attention where one particular or two children, for the period that they were in fact in one of these homes, were being allowed to go out to people who were in and around the home. End result is allegations of abuse. So we have to be careful where the emotion and the speculation go, but stay fixed that if there is evidence of wrongdoing, that it must be pursued by the competent authority, and that is the police. Okay? Thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you again along the way.
Going beyond the headlines. Asking the questions you want answered. Exploring government policies and how they impact you. We are delving deeper.
Join TTT this Sunday at 7 p.m. for